Okay, here we are with the concept development for lesson 7. This, I want you to, even if you understand how to do this, there's one problem, the very last one, that has to do with the mystery number that I want to make sure everybody sees. So even if you get this part, at least watch that last video or the last problem at the end. Okay, so let's start with our problem. What is 3/5 of 35? We were doing the same exact thing yesterday with arrays. Today I'm going to show you how to do it using a tape diagram. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw my box for my tape diagram, and I need to see what is my whole number. Well, my whole number is 35, so my tape diagram is worth 35. Now I need to look and see what am I going to be splitting my tape diagram into? How many pieces is this whole made up of? And I'm going to look to my fraction to figure that out. So here it ends, the denominator is a 5, so that tells me that 35 needs to be split into 5 even pieces. Okay, so if I have 35 and I'm splitting it into 5 even pieces, how can I figure out what each one of these is worth? Division. 35 divided by 5, and that gives me 7. So that means that each one of these boxes is worth 7. Now, I'm not quite done yet. I have one last step. I need to look back at my problem. I see that the problem is asking me 3/5, so I need to know 3 out of the 5 pieces altogether. So 3 is 1, 2, 3 boxes. Now, what is 3 groups of 7? That makes 21. So 3/5 of 25 is 21. Okay, here's the next problem. This one is worded as a word problem. So we're going to use our strategy of underlining the important pieces first. 2 dozen. I'm underlining dozen because that's my whole number. 2 isn't my whole number. 2 dozen is. So we're going to have to come back to this. Okay, my fraction 3/4 are red, and it just tells me the rest are white. So my problem is how many white roses did she buy? So the first thing I need to figure out is what is my whole number. And I'm looking at the 2 dozen to be able to help me with that. So I know it's the 2 dozen because, yes. Okay, my whole number is, I know it's not the 3/4 part. The only other number I'm given is 2 dozen. So 2 dozen is my whole number, but what does that mean? And 2 dozen is 12. Dozen, it means 12. Yes, it is. Jack's helping me do this part. So 2 dozen is 2 times 12, which means 24. So my whole number is 24, and I'm going to use that number to draw my tape diagram. So here I have my tape diagram drawn, and I've given it, I made it worth 24. So now I need to figure out how many pieces am I going to be splitting that tape diagram into, and remember I find that from my fraction. So my denominator is a 4.
I didn't do it down this house.
Yes. And 4 is the number of pieces I'm going to split it into. So
yeah.
24 in 4 chunks. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, how can I figure out what each one of these chunks is worth? So I need to do 24 divided by 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So that means each one of these chunks is worth 6. Jack's really excited to help me with this. Okay, I'm looking back at my problem and I see that 3/4 are red. So that means I'm looking at 3 out of the 4 boxes. So how many is 3 out of the 4? Well, that makes 18. But my question is, how many white roses did she buy? So 3/4 are red, 18 are red. So what does that leave? How many white roses? That leaves 6. Okay, we're going to do 2 more problems. So this one, Rosie had 17 yards of fabric, and she used 1/3 of it to make a quilt. How many yards of fabric did she use for the quilt? I'm going to do a tape diagram again. So what's my whole number? 17. My fraction is going to be 1/3. And I need to know how many yards of fabric she used for the quilt.
Like Grandma have it. Like Dad has one.
So here's my tape diagram. And I need to make that worth 17. Because that's my whole. How many chunks am I going to be splitting it into? I'm looking at my fraction. third. I know. So that means I'm going to be splitting it into how many pieces? And that means
How many pieces?
how many pieces, Jack? 3. So there's my 3 chunks. 1, 2, 3. And I need to know how much 1/3 is worth.
There's my phone.
Okay, so that means I'm looking at just that one little piece. So I need to know.
I didn't.
Okay, I find out what one of these is worth by taking my whole number and dividing it by 3. So 17 divided by 3, well, that's not a fast fact. I can't just do that. So I'm going to have to do division. So I'm going to do 17, my whole number, thank you, buddy, divided by 3. 3 goes into 17 5 times. And 5 times 3 is 15. Then I subtract, and I'm left with 2. So that means that one of these chunks is worth 5 wholes, 5 whole times, and then 2 out of 3 are left over. So that's worth 5 2/3. So that's how much fabric she used, because I just need to know one of those. Okay, last problem. This is the one that I wanted to make sure everybody sees, because this is kind of like a mystery number. It's a little different than the other problems. So I'm looking for 2/3 of a number is 8. I know that 2/3 is important, but what is my whole number here? It's not 8. It says 2/3 of a number is 8. I don't know what my whole number is, but 8 is important. I need to figure out. My question is asking me, what is the number, the whole number? So I'm going to draw a tape diagram because I can still use this to help me out. I'm looking at my whole number. Don't know. That's a question mark. But I do know that my fraction is telling me it's going to be split into 3 pieces. So let's split that into 3 from my denominator, and I know that 2 of those is 8, because that's what it tells me in the problem. 2 out of 3 equals 8. So knowing what I know about fractions and knowing that each of these chunks has to be worth the same, because that's like the law of fractions, what does that mean that this and this have to be? What is the only way to split 8 evenly into 2 groups? And that would be 4. And my other law of fractions is I know that if this is 4 and this is 4, then this also has to equal 4. So what is my number? My whole number is 4, 8, 12. Mystery number equals 12. So that is your concept development today. Take your exit ticket quiz and see how you're going to do.